He was born into peace, and he destroyed it. Aegon Targaryen, fourth of his name, was the son of Viserys II, the Scholar King, whose quiet reforms had restored the realm after decades of chaos. Where his father valued wisdom and restraint, Aegon embodied indulgence. From childhood, he hungered for attention, luxury, and pleasure. Tutors found him clever, but undisciplined. Septons despaired at his mockery of prayer. Even as a boy, Aegon delighted in excess, eating until he was ill, drinking wine at 13, and surrounding himself with flatterers and fools. His father hoped to refine him through study, but Aegon treated books as burdens. Where Viserys had built systems of order, Aegon saw cages. "A king," he once said, "should not count coppers, he should count hearts." But the hearts he sought were never those of his subjects. They were those of women, courtiers, and sycophants. At 16, he was wed to his sister Naerys Targaryen, a union arranged to preserve the purity of the royal line. Naerys was everything he was not: gentle, devout, and fragile. She loved peace, song, and prayer. Aegon loved everything else. It was said she wept on their wedding night, and that he laughed at her tears. When Viserys II died, the lords of Westeros hoped his son would continue his work of reason. What they received instead was decadence given form. Aegon IV was crowned in the Great Hall of the Red Keep, where he feasted for 9 days and nights. Each night the tables groaned beneath the weight of roasted boar, swan, and wine imported from Lys and Volantis. He gave gifts of jewels and gold to his mistresses, knighted his favorites, and filled the small council with flatterers. The learned men who had served his father were dismissed or ignored. Under Aegon's rule, the court became a carnival of excess. Feasts, tourneys, and masquerades consumed the treasury. The king's mistresses, noble and low-born alike, were given titles, lands, and power. The most notorious of them all was Lady Barbara Bracken, whose influence over the king provoked endless scandal. She was later replaced by Melissa Blackwood, her rival from the Riverlands. The Bracken-Blackwood feud, centuries old, now burned brighter than ever within the royal bedchamber itself. The king's indulgence spread like disease. Bribes bought offices, gold purchased pardons, and justice itself went to the highest bidder. The court's moral decay infected the realm. Lords began taxing their small folk to fund their own extravagance, following their king's example. The small folk called him Aegon the Unworthy, not to his face, but in every tavern from dawn to the wall. Aegon's reign became a study in self-destruction. The once orderly court of Viserys turned into a theater of cruelty and indulgence. Aegon's appetites were endless. He grew fat and sickly, his face swollen, his breath foul. Yet he boasted of his virility and demanded to be called the Handsome. He took hundreds of lovers, both noblewomen and commoners, fathering bastards across the realm. He lavished gifts upon them while neglecting his lawful wife and his duties as king. He delighted in humiliating his courtiers, ordering duels for his amusement, mocking the pious and rewarding betrayal. He sold knighthoods and lordships to the undeserving, elevating fools and sycophants while banishing the wise. Those who criticized him disappeared or were found dead under suspicious circumstances. The crown's gold was spent not on the realm, but on pleasure barges that drifted down the Blackwater, where the king and his companions indulged every vice imaginable. And yet, amid the ruin, there remained one glimmer of nobility: his brother, Prince Aemon the Dragonknight. Ser Aemon was the very image of a chivalric ideal, brave, loyal, and pure of heart. To the realm, he was a hero. To Aegon, he was a reminder of everything he could never be. The tragedy of Aegon's reign was not only his corruption, but the cruelty it brought to those closest to him. His queen, Naerys, bore his insults in silence. She gave him 2 children, a frail daughter Daenerys and a son, Daemon, a boy the king refused to believe was his own. In Aegon's eyes, Daemon's gentleness and intellect were proof of bastardy. He accused Naerys of adultery with her brother, Ser Aemon the Dragonknight, whose devotion to her had always been pure. The accusation nearly destroyed the royal family. Aemon refused to defend himself until Aegon forced him to trial by combat. When his accuser fell before him, Aemon refused to kill him, declaring his loyalty to the crown. Naerys fainted at the sight, and Aegon sneered that her tears were the truest confession. The queen's health never recovered. She retreated into prayer, her only solace the son her husband despised. As years passed, Aegon's cruelty deepened. He delighted in taunting his family, flaunting his mistresses before the court, and mocking Aemon's vows of chastity. When Queen Naerys died, some said from grief, Aegon ordered no mourning, only another feast. The 7 kingdoms whispered that the gods themselves had turned their faces from him. Aegon fathered more bastards than any king before or since. From noble women, handmaidens, and even servants, his offspring spread across the realm. Among them were names that would one day reshape Westeros. Daemon Waters, born of Melissa Blackwood, who would become known as Daemon Blackfyre. Aegor Rivers, called Bittersteel. Brynden Rivers, later known as Bloodraven, and Shiera Seastar, famed for her beauty and sorcery. Though many of these children were raised honorably, their existence sowed resentment among the great houses and within the royal line. When Aegon grew ill in his final years, bloated and bedridden, he performed one last act of vengeance upon his kingdom. On his deathbed, he legitimized all his bastards, declaring them lawful heirs. It was a decision born of spite, a final insult to his son Daemon II, whom he still refused to acknowledge. That act would fracture House Targaryen for generations. The legitimized bastards, proud and ambitious, would soon rise against their half-brother, tearing Westeros apart in the Blackfyre Rebellions. With one stroke of the quill, Aegon had doomed his line. When Aegon IV Targaryen died, the small folk scarcely wept. His body, swollen with disease, was said to have burst as it was laid in its coffin. A grotesque end for a grotesque reign. Yet even in death, his corruption endured. His bastards lived on, his lusts echoed in legend, and his choices shaped the century to come. To the maesters, he was a cautionary tale, proof that a king's vices could destroy a dynasty faster than any war. To the septons, he was divine punishment for pride. To the singers, he was tragedy incarnate, a man born to greatness who drowned in his own appetites. His father had built a kingdom of law and wisdom. Aegon left behind a legacy of ruin. And yet, from that ruin would rise new dragons, and the greatest civil war since the dance itself. In the next episode, witness the reign of Daemon II Targaryen, called the Good. A king of peace and diplomacy, he would seek to unite the realm his father shattered. But blood calls to blood, and his father's bastards, led by Daemon Blackfyre, would soon rise in rebellion. From the ashes of corruption will come a war of brothers, sons, and shadows. The beginning of the end for the Targaryen dynasty.